This letter from Paul is filled with words such as joy and glad and enjoy and rejoice and happiness. 17 times throughout this letter, you will see these types of words used again and again by Paul. A letter filled with joy in spite of harsh circumstances. Powerful testimony, isn't it? A powerful statement. Understanding that joy isn't based upon our circumstances. It's not based upon what we have, what we don't have. It's based upon a relationship. A relationship that we cultivate with God. God is available and we cultivate it. We learn and we grow through this relationship. It's not based upon anything that we can conjure up. Psychologists these days talk about constructive joy. What in the world is constructive joy? Well, they say that you can create joy within yourself by fostering a good attitude. Let me suggest to you that that's still faltering because it is based upon your attitude. And your attitude is based upon these variables that keep changing, right? Our will goes up and down, and our attitude flows with the world as it goes up and down. So it's kind of hard to build joy. But joy doesn't come to us that way. Joy comes to us through our relationship, through our connection with God. God has the joy. We connect to God. God gives us the joy. He constructs joy in us. And it is up to us to tune into it. As I mentioned earlier, this letter to the Philippians is filled with joy. It's filled with gladness. It's filled with happiness. It's a powerful statement. In spite of our circumstances, we can have joy. Christians living in unity, in spite of their differences, is a powerful testimony, a powerful statement to the world. That God gives us this unity. This letter of Paul is also a very personal letter. It's like a thank you note to the Philippians. Paul is thanking them for their financial assistance, thanking them for all the help that they've been provided, thanking them for their prayers, thanking them for their moral support and for their love. This letter to the Philippians is a lesson in personal contentment and in relationship building. There are strong benefits to having healthy relationships. You see, good relationships help us in many ways. They encourage faith. They help us to develop a positive, realistic self-regard. And I say that, positive and realistic self-regard. We don't look at ourselves too highly. We look at ourselves realistically within the framework of being a child of God. Good relationships help us to build a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. They can reduce stress levels, even contribute to a longer and joyful existence. On the other hand, we all know the effects of poor or bad relationships, unhealthy relationships. They can cause a lowering of self-esteem, a lowering of sense of self-worth. They can cause feelings of helplessness, of hopelessness, of fear. We were talking earlier on about fear, that voice within, but the voice of truth. But an unhealthy relationship can cause us anxiety and fear, insecurity, even paranoia. The reality is there's nothing like a good relationship. But likewise, there is nothing like a bad relationship. A couple of quotes that are up there I give you. Being in no relationship is better than being in the wrong relationship. Or a bad relationship will make you feel more alone than when you are single. No one jumps into even a good relationship fully prepared. When we started off as Christians, and some of you might be able to remember your early days as a Christian. For some of us, it's going back a couple of years, a couple of decades. Well, actually, in my case, it goes back to the last century. I wanted to say that because it makes it sound big, doesn't it? But do you remember how you were growing and you were learning? You weren't there yet, were you? Maybe you had that excitement, that enthusiasm, but you really didn't have the understanding. And how did we grow in this relationship? We grew in the relationship by God by what? By listening to Him, by connecting with Him, by reading the Bible, by talking to other Christians who are mature, and listening and absorbing and growing and growing and growing. It works the same for all relationships. I had a really nice talk with a younger couple a few weeks ago, a younger couple. I mean, in my case, that could be any age group. But they were telling me how they've been married for a total of 15 years. And the way they say that too, you know. We've been married for 15 years. Oh my. Don't worry, it's the first 50 that are hardest. After that, you don't remember anything. But they were telling me this thing that they had figured out. They said, we were immature when we got married. But we've grown together. Did you hear that? We've grown together. And the secret was by listening to each other. By listening to each other. We're not there when we first start. We come into a relationship and we have all of these beautiful, wonderful ideas of what the other person should be like and how we're going to mold them into our image. But it doesn't work like that, does it? We only grow together when we're willing to listen to one another, absorb their words, listen to their feelings, and then start responding and acting and reacting to that. That's how we grow. We grow by listening. We grow by connecting. So the same thing, growing with God and growing in the body of Christ. We grow by listening and we grow by connecting. Again in this letter to the Philippians, Paul gives us some very good principles on how to build good, solid relationships. Now, like a lot of principles, they are fairly easy to explain. They're fairly simple also to understand. But they are incredibly difficult to put into practice. It takes effort, and it takes a lot of grace from God. As I get into these principles, so I'm going to use it as an opportunity as well to recap a bit of what I was talking about last week. Last week we were talking about how our commitment must be first and foremost to God and then to others. First and foremost. And so we look at this week, and I'm going to add the word, a passionate commitment to God. And we're going to look at this through Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 to 30. The parable of the talents. Now, just in summarizing the parable of the talents, there were 3 people that were chosen by the master, and he gave them money. And he's looking for them to invest their money. Now, 2 people were fully committed. Their soul was on fire. They were passionate. And they received something from their master and they went, this is wonderful, this is great. I'm going to show him what I can do. He's given me this ability, and I'm going to use this ability, and I'm going to show him what I can do with it. And so they went out and they invested it. As I was mentioning a few weeks ago, maybe they listened to that Bible verse about cast your bread upon the waters, and they thought that maybe they should go into foreign investments. And so they did that, and they had a return. Now, don't take that out of context, okay? But the master comes and they say, look what we've done. Look what we've done. And I imagine he's excited too. Great job. Well done. I'm so pleased. Then he goes to the third person. Now I'm going to use the third person, the third guy, because it's going to be a guy. And he says, okay, what did you do? Okay, this is what we find out. And I'll read it in Matthew chapter 25, verse 24. The servant given 1,000 said, Master, I know you have high standards and hate careless ways. Actually, what he's doing is he's describing himself right there. You hate careless ways, and I'm kind of careless. That you demand the best, and I'm not ready to give it. That you make no allowances for errors, and I make mistakes all the time because I don't listen. I was afraid. Remember talking about fear? I was afraid I might disappoint you. So I found a good hiding place. And I secured your money. Here it is, safe and sound, down to the last penny. Okay, so let's summarize this. Let's be very honest. This guy is lazy. He is fearful, he is lazy, he is unmotivated, and he is ungrateful. He's not motivated whatsoever. He gets the money, and the first thing he thinks of is, oh my heavens, what am I going to do with this? Where am I going to put it? And so he goes out in the field, and he digs a hole, and he buries it. And he says, well, that's safe-ish. Well, if nobody plows the field, I'm not going to plow the field. I just don't want to do that. It's too hot. It's too hot to do the things now that it was too cold to do the things back then. So I'm not going to do anything about it. I love this story my friend tells me. He tells me his friend about his father's father. And for some reason he had grown this disliking for banks and this distrust for banks. It's a good thing we don't have that. And so what he was doing is that he was taking all of his money that he didn't spend and he put it in a box. And every now and then he would go out in the backyard and he would dig a hole and he would bury the box in the backyard. Now his wife was trying to remember all of the places. And she actually drew a bit of a map, but she couldn't keep up with it all because he buried quite a few boxes. So when his father passed away, all of the kids got together and they excavated as much of the backyard as they could. He said they literally found thousands of dollars in these little boxes. Right down to the last cent. They hadn't gained any interest. I would imagine that when that property came up for sale, people were probably looking, I think I'll buy that property there. Because they weren't sure. They weren't sure if they got them all. Anyways, back to this lazy, unmotivated servant. So he digs up the dirt. He digs up the money out of the dirt. And he gives his money, his master back, get this, dirty money. Well, maybe he went out and had it laundered before he gave it back to his master. See, there's consequences to this. There's consequences to this. Matthew chapter 25, verse 26. His master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who had 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's consequences. There's consequences to our lack of action. There's consequences to lack of commitment. There's a thought about commitment. Think about it this way here. The commitment that we had yesterday affected us where we're at today. You know, the commitments that we had yesterday. If you or a person is a doctor, that meant that you were committed yesterday to study and to learn, right? And you became your commitments. If a person is a lawyer, that meant that years ago they were committed to learning and studying to become a lawyer, and so they became their commitments. If we are committed to God, we will become our commitment. That's the key. We become the commitments that we have. What we are committed to today will shape who we will be tomorrow. Now listen to this thought. Satan knows this. Satan knows all about this. And his goal is to make sure that we don't follow through in our commitments. Because he knows that if we're faithful and trying and working towards following through in our commitments, that God will take that and help us and make us what he wants us to be. God can help us to make us who he created us to be. And for each and every one of us, God has a plan. And it doesn't matter where we think our life is going. And it doesn't matter if we feel that our life has been derailed for a while. Because you see, with God and the little commitment that we can muster up, he can make something beautiful of our life. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion, he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife, but he made something beautiful of my life. God says, I will help you with your commitment. And we know that we need his help because we can't do it by ourselves. We need his help, but we need to make those commitments. In Matthew chapter 25 and verse 41, we see this verse here. It says, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. And it says, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I like the way it put it in the Message. You see it right there? There is part of you that is eager, ready for anything in God. But, now look at it. There's another part that's as lazy as an old dog by a fire. Unmotivated, completely unmotivated. How? How do we address this issue of motivation? Psalm 37 verse 4 to 6 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteousness to shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. How can we have this delight for the Lord? I'm going to give you some thoughts from the book of the letter to Philippians. Very first thing that Paul says when he's talking about the people, what does he say? I thank my God. I thank my God. The very first thing, the place we start at is gratitude. I am grateful to God for the people in my life.